Smells worse over here than a dozen rotten eggs dropped in a vat of vinegar.
Then don't come over. Not like you're buying anything.
If I don't come visit your ton, who will?
Wouldn't you like to know?
Even though it's one of the most universally acclaimed CRPGs, it's taken 5 years since the initial release on Microsoft Windows in 2017 for me to finally dive into Divinity Original Sin 2 from Larian Studios. Hello, I'm David Lloyd, host for this special episode of The Thirsty Mage, where I take an individual dive into a game that I just couldn't convince the other patrons of the pub to play. I'll have as much success convincing Jordan, Paige, and Casey to play a CRPG as Quintus does trying to convince Squall about sharing his feelings. This episode is, I'll just be talking about the game and my many experiences up until the end of the first act, and so it's kind of almost like a little mini spoiler cast of the first 15-ish hours of this Divinity Original Sin 2. So we're the pub itself is still on holiday break, so we're off for just this one more week. We'll be back next week with a preview or maybe a little bit of a review of Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII. I don't even remember, remaster, whatever it's called. But we'll be back next week for a full-on episode. But yeah, this week I'll be talking about the Larian Studios Golden Gem. It's truly a shame we couldn't get the full pub for a playthrough, as Larian Studios, maker of the Divinity franchise, have really established themselves as a leader in the CRPG genre. The last 2 decades, they've been doing some superior video game development and even earned the praise of Wizards of the Coast. So much so that they were handed the keys to the Baldur's Gate franchise and are the developers of the highly anticipated 3rd installment. So that's available right now on Steam in early access, but they did give a official release date. I can't remember when it is because there's just a million things we're releasing in 2023, but I'm pretty sure it's early on. I think it's like maybe end of spring or early summer. I can't remember, but yeah, I can't blame anyone for hesitating to hit the purchase button on this game, however, though, because I know CRPGs, and this one in particular, tend to require a substantial time commitment. And even for me, that patience threshold is constantly tested. It's not one of these types. These games aren't really ones that you can kind of just play in between others. You really have to devote time and attention to these to really fully understand the different mechanics, the different all the story, all the deep lore. Like these aren't games that you can kind of play with half attention. These demand your full attention. So so for Divinity Original Sin 2, it's set in the fantasy world of Revalion. It begins with your character, so there are custom characters that have been made. I believe there's 6 preset characters that you can choose from, or you can even custom create your own. But whatever you end up going with, the game starts off as you're a prisoner by the Divine Order on a boat heading for the prisoned island of Fort Joy. So as, like, whether or not you choose to be some kind of magic dealer, they're all of the different classes. Like you get all your traditional classes of, the warrior and the rogue and the sorcerer and the necromancer. Like there's all those different options, but regardless of what you decide to go with, you have a magic background, and that's why you've been taken prisoner by the Divine Order, as they're trying to round up all the people with the ability to access the source magic. And they're being taken to this island to be processed. So the backstory leading up to this point is that the 7 gods of Revalion have each provided a portion of their essence to Lucian, who is the founder of the Divine Order. And again, it's an organization meant to protect Revalion from the creatures of the Void, known as the Void Woken. And before the events of the game happen, Lucian has been slain, and in response, the Magisters of the Divine Order are rounding up all the sorcerers. Upon waking up on the ship, the player character finds themselves bound by a source collar that inhibits magical use, along with a large assortment of other sorcerers who are also bound for the same fate to the island. So the ship acts as a tutorial area. It allows the player to become accustomed with the controls and the battle system. So at the outset, you're just kind of in the bottom, or in the bowels of the hull, I guess you'd say, at the very bottom, in kind of like this torture chambery looking room. And so you get off the table and you kind of look around and you can look at the different inventories. There's not really much to pick up or do at this point, but there is kind of this little puzzle mechanic to open the door, so you got to figure out how does the door open. And there's actually a couple different ways to do that. There is like a hidden button that you could push, or you could even find a way to like break it open, or let's set it on fire. There's a few different ways to do it. And when you get into the first room, there's a guard and a prisoner. And so the guard will try to subdue you because you're not supposed to be in that room. And so, that's your first battle of the game. So you get a little taste of the battle system. And then the prisoners in the lock, and the prisoners asking for you to open the door. And this is kind of the first kind of taste of kind of that choose your own adventure. Do you leave them to rot in there? Do you open it up? What do you do? And depending on your choice, obviously there are different things that can happen. So in my case, I decided to open the door, and surprise, surprise, the sorcerer was a jerk and tried to kill me. So I had my second battle of the game. So after subduing him, you go up onto the next floor, and there's all the different custom created characters. The game kind of revolves around the 6 characters from the beginning. They're all on the ship, so you can kind of have conversations with them and get a little bit of the backstory, have a bit of a talk. There's like a sorcerer that got charred, and so you can kind of go on a little mini investigation to find out who done it. But when you get to the end of the boat, one of the powerful sorcerers ends up summoning a Voidwoken. So that in this case, these are typically evil characters from the void that are teleported into this world. In this case, there's a bunch of like worm-looking characters that ended up coming up the ship, but the most powerful Voidwoken was a Kraken, and that was summoned, and the Kraken ends up destroying the boat. And there's a few different things you can do again. You can run to the lifeboats to kind of get off, or you can go back. There's a guard that was kind of nice that you can go back and try to save, which is what I ended up doing. Not before stealing a book, though. There was a spell book next to the guard, and I thought I'll pinch this while I'm helping them out, just to get a benefit from it. But the ship ends up getting destroyed with you on it, and then as you're floating presumably to your death, a bright light comes down and shining through the water to you as you're going down, and decreeing that you are not to die. You have more important things that you'll need to do. So you kind of just wake up on the island. So this is basically chapter 1 of the game, and like I said, it's about 15-ish hours. I didn't do everything that you could do on the island. I did most things, so it wasn't. I don't think I left out too many important things. I did all the main quests. I did all the major side quests. So for the most part, I would say a lot of it was done. But when you first get to the island, what you'll do is you'll have to come up with a team. So in my case, because I used a custom created character, I had to choose. You could only choose 3 of the 6 because your party could only be 4. So for me, I ended up going with, and it's been a couple of months since I played the game, and about 300 hours of gaming, so I'm going to be a little forgetful on the names of the characters. But I ended up going with the Red Prince, which is kind of this. he's like royalty from this lizard. He's like he's this red lizard who is powerful in melee, in like kind of attacking, in physical attributes. So I kind of went with him as my warrior, and so he's looking for other. I guess it's not exactly sure what he's trying to like recapture a kingdom or something from what he said. But he's looking for these dream walking lizards, other lizards. So I'm helping him find those. One of the other characters I went with was Los. So Los is another. I guess the default class for Los is an enchanter. So I used her for having another. I had gone with like a sorcerer class, so I wanted a second. So I figured I'd have her as like a healer or enchanter. And the backstory of Los is that she has a demon inside in her head that kind of can take over her. So you have to. You're basically like. She's coming along because she's trying to figure out how to get this demon out of her head and to stop possessing her. And the last character I went with was Fane, which is this skeleton character who either he has to wear a cloak, or one of the first things you do with Fane is he has this magical mask that can turn him into like any of the different races of the game. So that's one of the first things that you'll end up doing with Fane. But Fane, I went with kind of a roguish magic. Like I really went heavy on the magic, for better or worse. So I have the Red Prince as like my clear-cut warrior. I have myself, who's more of a battle mage, which is like this really tall elf. I got Los, who's the kind of the enchanter healer, and then Fane is kind of like the rogue, with some attacking magic as well. So some of the things that I ended up doing right away was when you first kind of go into this town that's kind of built there, it's like this prison town. So there's a bunch of soldiers around, making sure nobody's getting into trouble. And there's a kind of group of hooligans is like threatening this other elf. And so I kind of step in and tell him to back off and creating some enemies. And what you end up finding out is there's like these elves that are hiding in a cavern kind of south. So I went down there and kind of found out that the way to get off the island is on this, I guess it's the eastern part of the island. There's like the fortress on the west, and then in the east is kind of this like old forest and broken down castle. And the whole point is to kind of get off the island, and there's like boats on the east side. So you're trying to find a way out of the fortress. So you find out that this elf has a key or knows the way to get out, but he's being held captive by this like gang leader in the town. And I mean, like it's just one thing after another. Like you go and you talk to the gang leader, and he's like, "Well, I'm not letting him out until I get things that were stolen from me returned." So then you go on a trip to find the stolen stuff, and just kind of keep following all these different quests to their completion, to the point where I ended up going kind of under the fortress, into the prison area, and then got into a pretty wild fight with a few soldiers, and then that kind of opened up the area to the east. Like I said, Divinity is a kind of classic CRPG, I would say. It's modern though. So all the fights are turn-based, and so you could start a fight anywhere, really. And once the fight is kind of initiated, it goes into this turn-based system where it works with like action points. So you could do, movement is action points, magic is action points, different things like that. So it if you played a CRPG before or a tactical strategy game, everything should feel pretty straightforward. One of the things that kind of I didn't catch right away is that every character has a magical shield, a physical shield, and then health. So you can't actually take away HP from an enemy until you've broken one of the shields, and then use that type of attack to then hurt them. So for example, if a soldier has 50 magic shield, 20 physical shield, and 50 health, then you might want to focus on hitting the physical shield first because there's only 20 attack points. Alternatively, if they have a lower magic shield and a higher physical shield, then you would want to attack those characters with magic first. So with the there's a lot of strategy involved. Like, it requires you having a balanced team because, if you come up, usually in a fight where you have several characters, there's a mix of, characters with more magic shields and characters with more physical shields. So you really have to have that mix to be able to get in to, win any one fight. Like, if you go in with all magic, you're going to end up in fights that really give you a hard time. But overall, I would say the attacking system or battle mechanics are really finely tuned. Like, once you kind of understand what's going on, I feel like they're a lot of fun, and you really can play any way you want. Like, it's just so open, and the leveling up system is so well designed that everything, like, you can kind of tell when you're in a battle where you're overpowered, so you do have a retreat or runaway option. And essentially, if you get into a point where you feel like you're just underpowered, there's always side quests that can be done that'll build up your leveling up. So there's always something to do, basically. So the end of chapter 1 was the hardest fight of the entire time, which makes sense. It's at the end of chapter 1, but it basically involved some of the Divine Order soldiers, a Void Woken monster that kind of comes out of nowhere mid-fight, that throws you for a loop, and a bunch of powerful characters. So it's funny that the tutorial starts with being on a ship, and the end of chapter 1 ends up being back on a ship because you end up commandeering a ship to get off the island. And then chapter 2 is exploring this ship because it's a pretty big ship, and figuring out what's on there and where to go next. So yeah, I guess won't get too much into it. It seems like a pretty good spot to end on. But yeah, it's just like I said, CRPGs, not everyone's cup of tea, and I know I'm the only one on the podcast that enjoys them. So I just wanted to take a quick opportunity to talk about it on a show, and this seems like the best one since nobody else is around. But I know going forward, just to give people a little idea of what's ahead. So like I said, next week is Crisis Core. We still have our Persona 5 Royal Spoiler Cast coming up now that Casey's finished. We have Shadows over Loathing, which is the sequel to West of Loathing. Yeah, I remember that now. So that was a really fun one, so that'll be a fun time. We have a Secret Santa episode coming up where we all end up getting each other games, so we'll talk about what we got and how the game's played. We'll potentially have some episodes on Fire Emblem Engage, Like a Dragon Ishin, Atelier Rise of 3, Persona 3, Persona 4, Dragon Quest 11, maybe Dragon Quest Treasures, and yeah, just a whole lot of stuff coming up. So I want to thank everyone who listened throughout 2022, who's now with us kicking off 2023. We're looking to hopefully have a fun year. A lot of big games coming out this year, so going to be plenty to talk about, of course. So if you haven't joined our Discord channel yet, head on over to thethirstymage.com to get the link to there. We're also on Twitter at thethirstymage, so you can come hang out with us on Twitter if you're still on there. And yeah, we're just looking forward to talking with everyone and enjoying some RPGs this year and having some good conversations. So thanks everyone who's been with us over these last 5 years. And here's to an exciting and hopefully fun 2023. Bye.